the Halo franchise is about three things: shooting aliens, blowing stuff up, and making terrible TV shows. What it isn't about is deep, introspective stories about loneliness and mystery, which is why Halo 3 ODST was such a dramatic left turn when it was released on the 22nd of September 2009. This was especially true seeming as the franchise was clouded in mystery as to its future, after Halo 3, released nearly 2 years prior to ODST, concluded the original Halo trilogy. How are Bungie, developers of Halo at the time, going to continue the narrative with Master Chief presumed dead at the end of Halo 3? Well, long story short, they weren't. Bungie had decided that it was time for them to part ways with the IP which they had made their name with, so they signed an agreement with Microsoft. 2 more games, then they were out. They decided that for their final 2 games, they should try and expand on the universe, spanning 3 games and multiple books/comics at the time, instead of continuing it further and further into the future. And so the question arose at Bungie: how did they make a Halo game without Mr. Halo himself? Master Chief had become a pop culture icon, with Halo being the Fortnite or Minecraft of its time. This made it incredibly difficult for Bungie to part ways with the character. However, it did allow them to ditch the aura that Sierra 117 carried of being practically unkillable, and to tell a much more human story. And so the idea of Halo 3 ODST was conceived: a grounded, less superhero-esque story that would take place on Earth exclusively, allowing Bungie and the player to explore a post-invasion New Mombasa, as well as show the day-to-day lives of normal civilians during the Human Covenant War.
Honey!
What?
Where's my super suit?
Now, if you don't know Halo like I do, you may be wondering what an ODST is. The Orbital Drop Shock Troopers, or ODSTs for short, are a fictitious division of the UNSC Marine Corps, which had been introduced to the franchise during Halo 2. They launch themselves out of orbiting ships, imagine like paratroopers but a lot higher up, and they're dropping a lot faster and a lot hotter, straight into active war zones. Expected to hop out, shoot a couple coveys, and be back home in time for tea. The reality is, often they dropped straight to their deaths, which ended up with the whole division being nicknamed Helljumpers. They weren't Spartans, and they're not super soldiers. Now, this active decision by Bungie, which allowed them to build a much more down-to-earth story, was actually enabled by the decision to take the focus away from the Spartans, and focus on the human element that the ODSTs contained a hell of a lot more of. That means no energy shields, no super strength or speed. The only distinguishing factor between an ODST and a standard Marine is training, and their methods of showing up to the battlefield. In order to reinforce this idea of humanity, Bungie released a live-action commercial which showed the story of an ODST, at his father's funeral, then as all his hair is shaved off during basic, then his basic training, and then his eventual death in combat. At a time where growing opposition towards American men and women in Iraq and the Middle East was main stage in American politics, a AAA video game that was seemingly anti-war and anti-indoctrination was an incredible method of making these fictional characters seem exceedingly more human than they actually were.
Don't worry. I know what the aliens like.
Not that dissimilar to a Star Wars movie. Halo 3 ODST opens with a dramatic text crawl, catching the player up with the events of the previous 3 games. Although the message is bleak, it does give the player a shred of hope. Maybe all is not lost. We are then introduced to our character, the Rookie. There isn't really much to say about him, except he's not a very vocal fella. He's a stereotypical silent protagonist.
Now's one of those times. Pays to be the strong, silent type.
And acts as the player's main point of view throughout the story, although this will change, but we'll get there when we get there. We're also introduced to the rest of Alpha 9, a ragtag group of 5 ODST soldiers: Dogmatic Leader, Gunnery Sergeant Buck, Heavy Weapons Guy Dutch, Resident Funny Man and Sniper Romeo, Explosives Guy Mickey, and of course Rookie. The team is also joined by Operation of Naval Intelligence operative Veronica Dare, who may or may not have history with Buck. I'm not going to drop fully in depth into the story in this video, however I will have to summarise some of it to explain the beauty of the game. From there, we drop down, aiming for the Covenant carrier above New Mombasa. At the last moment we veer off course, but then the Covenant carrier jumps into slip space, causing Rookie to collide with another pod, blacking out. We regain consciousness 6 hours later. Night has fallen and most if not all of the UNSC forces on the ground have been wiped out. It is then that we get control of Rookie and begin to explore the dark, sombre streets of Mombasa. ODST introduces a new hub world system that is unique to the game, if you exclude Infinite, which is pretty shit anyway, so we can all collectively ignore it. The game sees you exploring the empty streets, defeating patrols of Covenant and scavenging for bits and pieces of info that would help you get back in contact with your ODST fire team. It's reminiscent of a noir detective thriller, where you have to slowly piece together the story of, and attempt to reunite your squad. The structure of the game contradicts the standard linear storytelling of Halo games. Usually you play through the missions in perfect chronological order, each one leading on from the next. That's the essence of this game, and what makes it so beautiful to play. It goes against all of the tropes and cliches set out by the previous three, flipping them on their head. When you find a piece of evidence that could lead you to a teammate's whereabouts, the perspective of the game shifts. We jump back to certain points between the drop and Rookie waking up. This allows you to take control of your other fire team members. After these missions are finished, you return to Rookie, and you're always able to see how a certain scrap of evidence ended up where it is. These sequences are designed to juxtapose the quiet, contemplating nature of the Mombasa street sequences, providing that quintessential Halo gameplay that the franchise was so successful for in the first place. A great example of this is the mission Uplift Reserve, where you take control of Dutch, ripping through lines of Covenant infantry and armour in the back of a Warthog. Missions such as these help paint a complete picture of how the UNSC was completely outnumbered and outgunned compared to the Covenant, which really shows if Master Chief hadn't discovered the Halo rings, how doomed humanity really would be. Halo has always been renowned for its incredible scores which accompany its gameplay. Whether you're listening to the evangelical title music of the original, or the blood-pumping battle music that plays mid-skirmish, Halo 3 ODST is no exception with an iconic soundtrack. However, due to the game having a definitively different tone when compared to the other entries in the franchise, the soundtrack must adjust as well. This gave composers Marty O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore a unique challenge. How do they adapt the traditional motifs and stylings of a Halo OST to a much quieter, reflective atmosphere? In my opinion, they completely smashed out the park, with tracks like Deference for Darkness, which you would have heard at the start of this video, as well as battle songs like The Menagerie and The Office of Naval Intelligence. Deference for Darkness stands out not only because it is one of the most famous Halo songs, but thanks to its stark contrast from the other scores developed for Halo games. The traditional Halo would have rock and roll inspired, drum kit backed, fast paced tracks to keep up with the flow of gameplay. However, in ODST, thanks to the much more introspective feel, a song composed of mainly high strings and piano perfectly matches the despairing, hopeless tone of the game. It also uses standard smooth jazz instruments such as the saxophone, which suits the noir-esque detective thriller structure of the game. Furthermore, the curious arpeggiated chords act as a sort of leitmotif for the Rookie, and his struggle to uncover the secrets of what happened to his squad. It reappears in other songs such as The Light at the End. However, However, this time it's played slowly and isolated, mimicking the situation of the rookie himself. If you can't tell, I study music in school, so I'm going to try and put the little definitions for what those words mean. And thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. Halo 3 ODST is one of my favourite video games of all time, and I personally believe that it's a tragedy that it was left forgotten by so many. It does look like there is hope, however. The YouTube channel Corridor Crew is working on a new ODST fan film, and from what we've seen so far, it looks pretty incredible. Please do consider subscribing, it's a really good way to show support for the channel. If you have any thoughts on the game or how I can improve my content, please leave a comment down below. Thank you again, and I will hope to see you again next video.